story of someone who watched people be murdered in the streets of Walnut Street, Kentucky, in Harlan County. Of what it meant to be escaped under the shadow of darkness, an abusive stepfather, all the way from Walnut Street to Barberville to Corbin. And then getting to a point in the train where they had to decide whether they're going to go to New Orleans or Detroit. And Mrs. Bonner, having seen a picture in a magazine of J.B. Hudson Jewelers in Detroit, where people were well-dressed, she said to her mother, "Mom, if the people are this well-dressed in Detroit, there must be jobs there." And so she joined the northern migration that happened so much in Appalachia during that time. I mean, I think we think of the history of Appalachia, but she told the story at the time when her mother didn't come home from Knoxville for weeks because there was a racial riot. I had heard those stories. I'd heard NPR, and I'd seen pictures even around here about that story. That's part of the living legacy of what this means and why the Bonner Scholar Program, why the Bonner Foundation is here. The other part of the story is Mr. Bonner, who was born in Brooklyn. I used to say he was poor, born in Brooklyn, until somebody reminded me that everybody in Brooklyn was born poor. But a man who made his fortune, lost it all in the Great Depression, and then built it back, and having made a promise that all the money that he ever made, he would give back in one way or another. I remember I got the call when I just turned 30 years old. It was 2 days before, actually. He asked me to come visit him, and he said that this is something he wanted to do. And I remember, he told me, the one thing he said he wanted to replace despair with opportunity. And I thought of three things, which I, of course, never said out loud. And my first thought was, well, why did you make so much money in the first place? The second was, well, why did it take you so long to give it away? The third was, why did you ask me to help you do this? Again, of course, I didn't ask any of those things, and so I began that journey, that 21-year journey now, of being a part of the Bonner Foundation. The other story that I want to tell you, in terms of Appalachia, is a story about me and Bobby Hackett, two guys that went to college together, and two guys who, for the last 18 years, have worked together at the Bonner Foundation. And I think we grew up both kind of in similar situations, where we knew that there was a day when we wanted to come down to Appalachia, because we were that kind of folk. We knew about the stories and the challenges, and said that we want to come down someday for a year or two to do our year of service and then go on with our lives and our work. Funny thing, though, happened along the way. We had a professor named Robert Coles who wrote a book called The Call to Service. And Dr. Coles nominated us for an award from the Lyndhurst Foundation. And Bob and I got a phone call on this. We were awarded the Young Career Prize, which is the money that funded us for about 10 years. And I remember calling up my grandmother, who was a bit worried about me because I was walking around all over the place. And I said, "Grandma," I said, "I got to tell you, I won a Young Career Prize." And the best thing was that I could at least explain to my grandmother that I now had a career. Because how can you win a Young Career Prize if you didn't have a career? Anyway, in the midst of that, I got to meet people like Lee Smith and Will Campbell and Alex Haley and other folks that have been prominent people in the Appalachian history. So why Appalachia? Yes, there was the need, the neglect, and the abuse. But it was also about the people, the culture, the history, the beauty, the possibility, the faith community, and yes, indeed, God's calling us to all of us. And why Carson Newman? I have to tell you, when I got here on my first trip, I thought I was on Mars. I had never been to a place like this before. It was just so unfamiliar in so many ways. But the longer I stayed, and I'm just talking about hours, the more familiar it became. And I have to tell you that as I sat and listened, I remember listening to a glee club or a men's group singing at a worship service. And it was at that moment that I understood that part of my life's work, part of my call on my heart from God, was to be in relationship with this community, be in relationship with the individuals here, both then in 1989 and now in 2010. I mean, I think about Ashley and Matt, who have Bonner Love and Exemplar Rare. It doesn't always happen that way, but Bonner Love has its many ways of articulating itself. I remember in that first visit here, meeting Larry, And I think about, as we mentioned today, the miners in Raleigh County, West Virginia, which is a county just north of Concord, of Athens, West Virginia, and Mercer County, where you have brothers and sisters in the bottom. Yes, this is a loved community. This is a place that I love. But it's also a place that I feel deep love. And you might think that, oh, well, of course, you're a foundation guy, right? We all laugh at your jokes and tell you you look nice even when you don't. And, but I have to tell you that this has been a hard journey. I remember coming here in the sense of, people talked about evangelicals, and that's not something I grew up with. I wasn't familiar with it, I wasn't comfortable with it, and indeed I wasn't inspired by it. But visit after visit, I have come back here, and I have learned what it has meant to be evangelical. A sustained love that has gone far beyond many of my friends who have a passion for social justice, who talk about it, who toast to it, but are gone by the time that it's dark. And it's the Carson Newman students and others like you that stay and stay and stay. In my work as an activist, my motto was as a kid was to do good without being good. Any preacher's kid in the audience will know what I'm talking about. If you have any friends who are preacher's kids, you know what I'm talking about. But I learned along the way that it was more, and mostly born out of failures and disappointment, that it was more important to be faithful than it was to be successful. And in that search for faithfulness, I came back to my faith and tried to gain a sense of strength and possibility that comes with that. I remember one time at being in seminary, when a group of my friends kind of surrounded me at the lunch table, and they said, "Wait, we want to talk to you." I was like, "What's up?" And they said, "Wait, we know you might not feel comfortable with this, but they said, we want you to understand that we think you are evangelical." And I was like, "No way, man. That's not me." I said, "Why would you say that about me?" And the response was that we believe you're evangelical because you love the gospel. As if God wasn't hitting me on the head enough or didn't have such a sense of humor. What he did was, when I was ordained in the Presbyterian Church, I was ordained as an evangelist. Like I said, it's not been an easy path. Mr. Bonner was a difficult man to work with. But I remember my dad telling me that in 3 words, he said, "Just do your work." And that's what I did in those difficult years. President Maddox is here. I remember the first time I came to campus, maybe it was the second time, I was in a meeting with him talking about what we were planning to do, the big hopes, and I got a phone call, and Dr. Maddox's secretary said, "Mr. Meisel, there's somebody who wants to talk to you." And in the middle of the meeting, I had to leave. Mr. Meisel said, "I want you home right now." I'm surprised Dr. Maddox ever took my call again, but he did it again and again. When you're dealing with power, when you're dealing with money, it's easy for people to get upset. There's issues of geography and class and race and politics and interpretation of the gospel. I remember one school was so upset with me that they declared their school a lane